Beyond the Ghostlight.
Word! Good to see you guys.
Hey, hello.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all, and welcome to our next edition of Beyond the Ghostlight.
Woo!
Yes.
Yes. So this week we have Andre Batts. We are super excited about that. He is the creator of Urban Style Comics, and he's an incredible artist that we are super excited to talk with. Nick, do you want to say something about this gentleman? I know you know him.
Yes, absolutely. So, Urban Style Comics, and also the Black Age of Comics Comic Con, essentially, that has been held in various places in Detroit for several years. Obviously, this year, well, we all know this year. But it's a wonderful celebration of creators of color who are producing comic book art and graphic novels, and just the celebration there of that creativity. And we thought, comic books, that matches with what we have. What we're interested in. There's a lot of horror comics out there as well as superhero comics. It's a great topic to talk about. So here we are.
So then, without further ado, let's bring Andre on to have a little chit chat, shall we?
Round of applause.
Hey.
Throw those hands in. Hello. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm feeling a little drawn myself, if you will.
Okay.
Yes.
had to
and as you can see, there are reasons why I don't work in comics, because my skills when it comes to actually delineating facial structure is a little hinky.
You're already a work of art, Nick. So yeah, there you go. Nothing to improve on.
That he is.
Very true.
Well, Andre, we are so thrilled to have you with us tonight. I know that it's been a crazy year in general. I'm sure for the industry right now, and for graphic novel artists in general. So again, just thanks for your time. We really appreciate it, and we're so thrilled to be able to give some love to some of the most talented artists out there in Detroit working right now. So, cheers.
Thank you, Luna, for that. I really appreciate you saying that and speaking, because we do feel that way, all three of us. So thank you, Luna, for saying that. Appreciate you. And without further ado, let's get into these questions, shall we? Because there's some stuff I want to know. Let's start out with right off the bat. Let's get hard hitting there. What is it like being a Black artist in a predominantly white genre?
It's not really anything that's hard or whatever. It's just all about blending in, and with me, per se, I just create, what I like or whatever, and I just hope that everybody gravitate to it for the most part. Because when you think about art and comics and things like that, most of us, we draw what we're accustomed to, what we like seeing, and a lot of times, it's something that crosses over into every market there is. With me, Dreadlocks, I think, is one of the characters that eventually ended up crossing the market faster than I thought it would. But, it's nothing hard. It's just going there being you for the most part. I think everybody that at a con, they really respect that. More so than you going there trying to, imitate everybody else, if that makes sense. So you go there, you be you, and then everybody, they say, I really like this. They gravitate to it, and next thing you know, I'm on your show.
I love it. How long have you been? Tell us a little bit about how long you've been creating with your genre. What is the evolution of kind of your style look like, maybe from the time when you started through now? Just get a little background about where you started and where we are now.
Okay. When I first started, it was basically like a coloring book style of artwork, believe it or not, and it was left to be desired or whatever. But I continued doing my artwork and writing my stories. Uh, and when I first started, like I said, it was a lot that I had to learn, and I picked up books such as drawing the marble way, jackham, drawing figures. Even went to a few classes, to take up a few, art classes as far as figure drawing. I did that, and it helped me along the way. But for the most part, I was more or less concentrated on my stories than I was the actual artwork. And with that being said, I ended up hiring a lot of artists, different artists, to work with me that could captivate the actual look that I was looking for the character, as well as something that could go along with the actual story. A lot of times we'll have the artwork out there when the story just doesn't match up. Oh, my dog is going crazy. Hold on.
Oh, good. We all say that's our favorite part. The only good thing about this quarantine is seeing everyone's dogs at home. So you're all good. Tori, I'm hoping some of your fur babies, crossing the background somewhere back there.
They're all taking a nap, so we don't have to worry about that right now.
Right? No, and I appreciate. I love. I love what Andre was kind of mentioning. Like starting off and looking at forms and other like templates from starting and then being able to hire other people who see and share your vision. I think that's really cool. So
Right.
yeah, and hey, perfect timing.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I have a pug and he's like 16 years old. And right now.
Oh,
I mean, feel free to bring him on to, people love to see them.
Oh, yeah. I just may have to do that. But yeah. So I ended up hiring different artists or whatever that could captivate the story. Because like I said, sometimes the story doesn't necessarily match up with the artwork. So and so, I think that helped me progress a little bit where I am right now. Because, I had met an individual that was doing comics. I think he was doing fantasy comics back at the Motor City Comic Con back in, I think it was 1999 when I met the guy. And he had told me something about, if you want this to go far, you may want to concentrate on one thing. Because if you're doing both, you may not get that far with the comics because you're going to be lagging somewhere. You're going to either be lagging with the story or you're going to lag with the artwork. Right. So I felt that the story was very important to get out. So I concentrate more on the story and I got more into doing layouts and the character designs and things of that nature. So that's what leads me to where I am right now.
So you sort of went down the Stan Lee route, where you're the overall,
face
mastermind, creating the thing and then having the artists.
Correct. I study Stan Lee, so if you go back in the past and look at some other interviews, I always reference Stan Lee on everything, just about.
Beautiful. So speaking of that, like you grew up in that sort of like interesting, almost sweet spot where, it's the Silver Age, the comics are starting to do like nuanced, complex stories. X-Men are coming in and they're dealing with like, somewhat veiled political messages, but comics are still sort of seen as a thing for like, dorks, basically. So, and that's kind of a two-edged sword, Right. It's like it's a special thing, but it's also a really nerdy thing. So, like, it's kind of a really interesting place to start in your creative process and in your creative history and evolution. What was that time like? Because it's a really interesting time that none of us were there to, none of the three of us were there to experience, but we all have read, things from that period. But what was that like, that time?
Well, back then, I'm more or less born in the '60s, so '70s, young baby, or young teenager in the '70s.
Uh-huh.
For the most part, we had the stores that had the different comic books, and we would go into the stores, after school, and buy our comics and read them. Like you said, it seemed kind of nerdy. You want everybody to see you reading a comic book. You probably turn your back or something like that. Nothing of importance. But yeah, that's really what started me into comics. Was when I was a kid. One of the things my father had pushed us for us to read every day when we got out of school. Not only did we have homework, he had us reading every different thing that was out. It had to be something that we weren't familiar with that he had us reading. But needless to say, that's when I gravitated to comics, even though he wasn't a fan of comics. But I gravitated to some of the stories and some of the characters, I should say. And in doing so, yeah, you were looked at a certain way by certain people that lived in your neighborhoods or whatever. But the same thing they did, I did as well. Played basketball, football, whatever. We did it all. The only difference is I was really into comics or whatever, and then that's when I really got into drawing. I was drawing different characters out of the book, out of the pages, such as Spider-Man, Black Panther, Silver Surfer. Those are kind of like my favorite characters, as well as Doctor Strange. And I just kept on doing it from that point. Comics is like a movie on paper. So I was always excited about that.
Right.
Exactly. Movie on paper. I love that. I love that. And perfect segue. You mentioned some of your favorite comic characters.
Right.
What are some of your favorite comic story arcs?
Well, one of my favorite story arcs was we're going way back if I can remember. Was the Mary Jane and Spider-Man's Peter Parker story, Spectacular Spider-Man. A lot of those story arcs were pretty good. One of my favorite villains was Dr. Octopus. I was always fascinated about him. But as far as the art, I guess I never really got into the art much because I was more or less into the artwork. That's what really, had me, gravitated to the artwork. And as far as the storylines, that's when I get into like the Doctor Strange, because I liked a lot of his storylines, and just, because it was so different. It wasn't normal, it wasn't on the earthly plane, I should say. So it allowed you to go exist outside of the realm what you actually live in. So in reading him, I really was excited. It may have been strange in reading him at 10 years old or 11, but at the same time, I felt that it was quite interesting. And as time progressed, I ended up, developing my own character, which is Dreadlocks, and it's kind of like the same abilities to some degree. So.
And Doctor Strange is really good. Is really interesting because he straddles both the superhero and the kind of horror types of comics, which is always cool. And actually, on similar topic, Vic just asked a question. Hey, Vic. Who are some of your favorite artists and what artists have influenced you? I can't remember who was drawing Doctor Strange in around the time where you started reading him, but like I imagine that's one. Was that Kirby at that point, or
Kirby wasn't drawing Doctor Strange back then? I don't know who started drawing Strange, because he came out. I think Kirby wasn't even drawing much of Marvel at that time.
Yeah, I think he'd moved on. Yeah, but
I can't remember who the artist was to be exact. I can't really remember it, but I do recall the artwork was good. Jack Kirby is more or less one of the main influencers of what I've seen as far as good artwork back then. Then you had later on, you had your Jim Lees, you had Mark Silvestri, Del Keon, and that all those came along in the 80s and late 80s and the 90s. Larry Stroman, all these guys, Ken Lashley, these guys, they influence, your art style or whatever, as far as, what you're looking at. Once you see that, you don't need to see anybody else's artwork.
Right.
No, I appreciate that. And speaking of inspirations, I love that your mom's albums, that that your mother's artist work is some of your early inspirations. And I want to know, is there any are there any pieces of your mother's artwork that are it's particularly inspirational for you?
No, my mother wasn't really an artist. My grandmother was the artist.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, your mother.
Yeah,
Right.
it's okay. My grandmother was the artist, rest in peace. She could do it just about everything, and she really influenced me to stay focused on my artwork. And after school, whenever she was babysitting and we had to stay at her house, she always made sure that I was drawing on a consistent basis. So I really appreciate that from my grandmother. And she was more into like pattern style art as far as fabric and things of that nature, but she could get into other artwork as well.
That's beautiful. I think that having support, from family or those who are close to us is just it's such an important thing for young people, trying to get started or trying to learn where to get started. And so having that extra support from a parent or grandparent saying, "Yeah, absolutely, you can do this." I think it's so great. So that's fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I also like that you have this whole universe, and that creating a universe is always a mixed endeavor. It's a really fun thing, but it's a very involved thing. And usually it starts with one character and you build out. But how do you go about the creation of an entire universe? Essentially, obviously, Dreadlocks is there, but you've built beyond, and you have that whole universe, and that's a whole process. So it's a little bit about that.
It's a pretty long process as far as that's concerned. And when I first created Dreadlocks, it was certain things that I wanted him to deal with, but it appeared to seem like he was just overwhelmed with too much. So as far as I figured it out, like, wait a minute, this character cannot do every single thing there is. So therefore, I'm going to have to make up a character that can be a part of this aspect of who Dreadlocks is and what he would cover. And I have to create another character that can bring this to the forefront. Then I have to create a character that can bring the feminism aspect into the comics or whatever. So I utilized the different aspects of Dreadlock's personality and started creating different other characters. And I have the anti-hero, which is Jihad AD. I have Black Watch, all those kind of backwards here. This is, let's see. Let me make sure I got my hand right. Yeah. Black Watch over here. And over here, we have my character, Jihad AD, back here. Then I have other characters as well. And I created different universes for each character so that they don't overlap as far as storylines are concerned. But I do have crossovers, with the characters where they somehow get zapped into the same universe. But it's a process because you always want to make sure that, the characters going to have the same storylines or the same personalities. It's a lot of things that can end up seeming like I have a character called Queen Nubia. I don't want her to sound like Dreadlocks, so seem like Dreadlocks, the one and the same, because I'm writing both of them. But I have a new writer now on board to write the story art for the Queen Nubia character.
Very cool.
Wonderful. So, all right, let's get into some more fun stuff. The next couple of questions are talking about 2020, right? 2020. Whew.
2020, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's
But
rough right now.
but let's talk about some of the things that came to the forefront in society in 2020, right? And one of the things is representation, BIPOC representation. And one of the questions that we want to ask, and something that we have been doing in Michigan Theater, in case you didn't know, in case you guys didn't know, is we're working on becoming anti-racist. Michigan Theater as a whole is working towards becoming an anti-racist establishment in Michigan, as well as each individual theater. All of us are taking it on our own accord to learn and to grow and to be able to create an environment where representation is right, and where people of color can perform the way they're supposed to be allowed to. And me personally, I'm actually I'm mixed biracial, as is Luna, and it's been a very interesting conversation to have about representation in art. So that question is, when you create your characters, what role does that concept play when you're creating their personalities?
Well, actually, it's a pretty big role because when I growing up in Detroit or whatever, I don't know, you mentioned Michigan. Detroit is predominantly black, 85%. At one time it was like 90%, but with that being said, my environment is what allowed me to create my characters. So I really wasn't exposed to a lot of different other people because, my dog, he's just losing it here. Okay. Okay. He's just getting into everything. Maybe I should put him up here. Maybe he'll be happy.
He wants to be part of the show, it sounds like.
He wants the guest star, so yes, bring him up.
We won't fight it, I promise.
Oh, look at the baby.
Hey, dude.
Yeah, you're on screen now. Say hi. I was saying that in my environment, which was predominantly black, my neighborhood I grew up, and we didn't see everybody else, so wasn't exposed to other people, other ethnicities. With that being said, I didn't know what to create, but characters that look like me or characters that look like what I've seen in comic books. But I think as far as diversity is concerned, and us bridging the gap and things of that nature, it needs to be more conversation as far as creativity, because everybody's are very creative to some degree. And I feel that, I think one of our biggest problems is we all have fell into this concept of the color spectrum thing, if that makes sense. You have white, you have black. If you look at yourself, you're not white. Look at me, I'm not black technically when we look at crayons. We don't represent crayons. Technically, we represent the human race. So until we realize that as a whole, then we're good. At that point, we can start communicating with each other, bring our artistic abilities to each other, and we can take from one another, learn from one another, and actually build from that. Until that happens, we're going to continuously have this problem. We have people that look like myself that probably wouldn't even be on a conversation like this with you guys. Then we have people that look like you guys that probably wouldn't even have me on this platform. Yeah. But I appreciate it, because one thing about me, I can communicate with any and everybody because that's why I'm here. That's my sole purpose. We all have a diagram or a program to fit in this world or in our creation or our existence. But a lot of us don't actually play into that because we play into what society has put out there. When you have, people like this president that's getting ready to leave out right now, when he constantly spewing the nonsense that he's putting out, it becomes a problem. And he's brought out a lot of people out of the woodworks that I didn't even know existed. But at the same time, it opened my eyes, and I'm sure it opened you guys' eyes up as well. Because a lot of us, we just go through the world thinking that this doesn't exist to that degree. But we know it does, but we don't have time for it because we're never involved with that. It's never in our environment or in our surroundings. But as far as creating a character, it helped me back when I first created the character to have an understanding of who I was. That was the first thing. 'Cause I already knew who I was through the eyes of what I was learning in school. Everything I learned was about European domination and things of that nature. Never did I learn anything about what I accomplished. I did learn that I was a slave, which was, I couldn't have sprouted up as a slave and then that's it, as far as my existence. So that led me to read and learn other things which related to myself, my people. And with that being said, it gave me a better understanding of what was going on and what my purpose was and what my purpose was. So it still is to this day. And that's been creating my comics. My comics are very strong and very reflective of who I am and who my people represent. There's just a lot of African-based information inside of my books. And it's not European-based whatsoever, but it may have some European overtones in it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it helps me develop the character. And that's what I said earlier. Like when I'm at a show, like say San Diego Comic-Con, it's like a big thing. Everybody see, okay, this is truly a Black character, African American character, whatever people choose to call it. The thing about it, they really like that, respect that, and they really gravitate to the book. And I did a show one day out in San Diego Comic Con, and I had two white ladies wearing Bloodlock t-shirts. So that was amazing to me, because back in the day I wouldn't have ever seen that, not at the Motor City Comic Con. Motor City Comic Con is missing when it comes to that diversity. They still putting us in the back or in the corner of their shows instead of having us all inclusive in their shows. My thing is, if you really want to put us in the back of the show, you can put a bunch of us back there and represent, say, the Black age of comics at the Motor City Comic Con. But they never do that. They just sprinkle us around. But it's starting to be more of us out there creating comics and comics of color. And it started to be noticeable now, which is a good thing. I'm just glad that I was one of the first ones doing it.
Yes, and I'm going to follow up on that. As there's so little representation of Black culture in the graphic novel world, the Ibis is in a little bit more of a horror niche, but we see the overlap. And it is a predominantly white space. Both of these are white spaces, really. And so, writing in a time where, for example, you brought up Marvel earlier, and we've got to acknowledge going ahead and launching the Marvel movies, the Blade series that finally, basically launched Marvel comic movies. Now we wouldn't have it without that, or the Doom series. There are these or Spawn, excuse me, Spawn launching and putting Black characters into the forefront that weren't stereotypes, that were fully fleshed, human beings who had gone through adversity and were trying to overcome their experiences and find something more in what it meant to be a hero. So I was curious, when you're creating a character, do you find yourself trying to think of new ways to express what is you see maybe missing in the industry right now? And do you have anything to say about maybe other Black artists who have or POC artists who have come forward and created characters that we love and we can check out today?
Well, I think there's a couple of artists out there that I think that can fit exactly what you're saying. You look at you have David Sims. Well, his name is David Sims. Just changed his name. Dawood Adi Brian. He did Brother Man Comics.
Right.
A guy named Dawood. He fits that criteria. You have Todd Johnson and Larry Stroman, when they did Tribe, they fit that criteria as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have man, there's so many guys out there. I can't even. You got Roosevelt Pitt. He has a character called Purge,
I know, right? I'm sorry, I'm not just putting you on the spot,
there's so many of them out there. I just can't even. You have a PB Soldier that's done by Sani Nasib. He's done a good job, and I see Gifted with that story art. I really love that story as well. It's more technology based or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It delves into a lot of different things that a lot of comics really don't even deal with when you're dealing with technology, as far as where he's coming from.
Right.
There's a lot of us out here, I just can't even name their names, and I'll go on and on and on.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. You hear that Motor City Comic Con? There are lots of people to be featuring front and center. So
right. So in creating and trying to change it up a little bit, it's all about reading, other stories and things that's happening or whatever in the world, such as we have the COVID issue that we're dealing with right now. That story in itself, even though this is factual in real life, we've been writing about stuff like this for years, and it's still happening to this day.
Yeah. All the sci-fi writers ended up nailing it, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's good to add a lot of sci-fi into your comics, because one of my comics, like I said, Jihad AD and Ragamuff, they deal a lot in science fiction, a lot. And in science fiction, I add a lot of different things as far as what's really going on out here into the actual book. But I try not to be teachy and preachy with it. I try to entertain with it.
And that makes sense. I like it. So segue again. We've actually got another wonderful audience question. So when you're universe building, when you're creating these universes, which takes precedence? Attracting new readers or rewarding long-term fans?
Ooh, that's tough.
Oh, Andre, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. That's a rough one right there, because I try to please both. I want new fans, and I like for my old fans to stick around. I never want to lose them whatsoever, because a lot of my older fans, their kids have been reading my books, and they become my new fans. So it's like a traditional thing now. It continues on that way. I have kids right now that are in their 20s that were reading my comics when they were 7 years old, and now they're like buying the books themselves. Those are they're old fans and new fans at the same time, because the story itself attracted their fathers or mothers when they were younger, and they read these stories to their kids. The kids start liking the stories themselves, and eventually they start buying the books themselves, and it carries on. So I want newer fans in another sense of like going out there, and I put a book out there, people see it and they're like, wow, this is amazing, I gotta have it. Those are the new fans. Older fans are beautiful. Their kids are beautiful. Their friends, when they introduce their friends to my books, that brings on newer fans, and I appreciate that. But it's tough, to really appease both new people, getting new readers, and keeping the old readers.
Yeah, tough balance to try to balance, and kind of with that, things are changing, with our older readers, our newer readers, people. I love what you said about friends sharing works, so that you're getting new readers from that, and kind of sharing like a story like a family. And I'm curious, because there's something about lending comics to, I'm guilty of this clearly, of lending to friends and family, and introducing people in new stories. And in some ways, that's been made easier by putting comics online and having them digitized, right? There's a virtual way of looking through them. But some of us, still need that old-fashioned feel of going into a shop and get the smell, and there's the smell. And so I guess I'm curious, do you foresee print comics being supplanted by online comics? Is there still a place for us old-fashioned people who like to read a book to check it out? And what is that kind of looking like from your angle?
Well, right now, with everything that's going on, it doesn't look good as far as the physical copies. But as far as digital copies, that is the wave of the future. I did a digital book a while back, maybe 10 years ago, before people even thought about digital comics.
Mm-hmm.
It was, way before its time.
Yeah.
So no one was ready for it. So needless to say,
Cool.
it did good, and it was so with that one. But I know if I redid it right now would be the time to do it. But I think the way of the Watchmen, when the Watchmen did their motion comics, I
Mhm.
think that would be the way to go as far as doing digital comics. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Gotcha. Thank you. And also thank you, Victor, for a great question.
Yeah, no, I loved that Tales of the Black Freighter, that digital comic that came in when Snyder was doing
Yes.
that. It was very difficult to know how to incorporate that in the movie, but I was glad that they found a way of, representing
Right.
that part of the published thing. Speaking of other universes, though, let's imagine that a genie appeared before you and said you could take control of any fictional universe. It can be comics, it can be movies, it can be a combo of movies and comics. And you get to reshape it in your image and how you want it to go. What universe would you pick, and what changes would you
That's
do?
a real good one there. Let me see. I made the Walking Dead universe.
You.
I'm a big fan of Walking Dead as far as the series and the comic or the graphic novels per se. I hated the fact that they stopped making it. There's a lot that I would have done with it. Like I don't know if you guys watch Fear of the Walking Dead.
Little bit. It's hard to stick with it once it
Yeah.
starts really going off from the original graphic novel. But we gave it a shot. So
I think that's what I would change, the Fear of the Walking Dead, because Morgan, even though he's the main guy in the movie, I mean not the movie, but the series, he took on a new persona. I think the first episode of this season.
Mhm.
I think I would have stuck with that persona. He became like a real tough guy, and I think he had a lot to bring as far as that Negan appeal. Negan from the comics, not Negan in the series on television.
Mhm.
And he had that appeal, and that's something that I really like. And I think I would make it a little more grittier, not necessarily made for TV, but the same thing. I think I would have had it a lot grittier than it is. I think The Walking Dead, as far as with Rick, he never got his hand chopped off in the series. I think that's what made him who he was in the comics.
Mhm.
I would have had to do that in the actual series, have his hand chopped off. Merle wouldn't even been in the storyline.
Thank
you
you.
know. And I hate to say it, Daryl wouldn't be in the storyline either, because it kind of takes away from those that have read the graphic novels and the comics.
Right.
Even though we appreciated Daryl, we still appreciate Daryl to this day. But I think I would have taken him out, and I would have made the universe more, more ethnic. I would have more of everybody in it, more inclusive. To me, I think with the Walking Dead series, it's not a representation of humanity per se. I would have had a lot of people that look like me in there, a lot of people that look like you guys. I would have just had it mixed up, like what it's supposed to be if everything went down like that. It's not just one race of people that's in survival mode. Everybody is in survival mode.
Right.
So it would have to be like a 50-50 thing. I would have changed the governor to some black crazy dude, and like I said, it would have been very gritty, and it would probably been more in the hood, as we would say, in the
Mhm.
urban area. I
Mhm.
think I would have, like when Rick came into Atlanta, right? I would have concentrated on that part of the story for a long time because
Right.
it would have been a lot for him to get out of Atlanta, more, as opposed to when he got into Atlanta.
Mhm.
I would have concentrated on that, and it just would have been The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, accordance to Andre.
Oh, that's awesome, and it sounds like such improvement already.
Oh, that's wonderful. I loved all of that. I would watch that and I would read that. All of the changes you made. So we'll go with that. So let me ask you, so what are your thoughts since we're talking about The Walking Dead? You and your segues, we need to get together because I can't even handle how perfect your segues keep happening because The Walking Dead is just oh so horrifying. What are your thoughts on
Right.
comics as a whole, and who would you say is doing great work in that currently?
That genre right now, I like everything that Bloomhouse Production has been putting out. I just watched The Hunt the other day, and it was more comical, but it was such a great movie, though. I can watch it again because it's so funny because it plays on actually what's going on in the world today with this, with the Trump and
Mhm.
all these minions or whatever. So it plays into that quite a bit because it has these elite Democrats is, hunting the Republican types or whatever, trying to take away their civil liberties and things of that nature. And the tables get turned inside the movie. But I think everything that Bloomhouse has done has been really good. Even what they've done, I think they were part of the distribution for either Get Out or Us. I'm not for sure, but I think they were part of it. I wish that 8 Films to Die For was still doing their thing. Uh, that film, I collected all those, but I wish that was still going on, but it's not. Uh, there's so many of them out there. I wish that they would have done another Evil Dead. The remake I thought was really good.
Yeah.
You know, but I think they should do another one, number 2 or something like that, but do it a little bit different than what the original one was.
Sure. I love it. And kind of on that note, what's, obviously we love horror here. What's one of the first horror movies that really got you kind of fall in love with it or curious about the genre?
Well, my one of my favorites is Hellraiser.
Mm.
That's one of my favorites. Because of the whole concept. Once again, we dealing with them being able to go into other dimensions. That goes into the Doctor Strange theory.
Right,
I've
right.
always been fascinated about that. And what's the name, Pinhead, for instance. The way they just ripped this guy apart. They just tore his soul apart. And this is what they asked for. They had no idea. But that's one of my I think that would be the one.
Mhm.
And I have others, even though it's back out in the 70s, like the Trilogy of Terror. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. The Trilogy of Terror with the little
Yeah.
voodoo. I think they need to redo that one. I've been waiting for a redo for some years. And I
Yes.
think that would be excellent when I was a kid. I seen that as a kid. That really had me, scared or whatever.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
think they could redo that, and it would be a success, especially if they let someone like Jordan Peele actually do it.
Yep.
That's the one that really got me into those type of that type of genre or whatever. Horror and comics, depending on what you're really dealing with, they kind of can cross reference one another. I
Mhm.
guess that's why I like Doctor Strange so much.
Sure, sure. And that kind of they deal with a lot of similar themes too, right? Like just kind of different ways of processing them. And so that
Mhm.
absolutely makes sense. And I'm right there with you. We've been seeing all these remakes being made
Right,
recently.
right.
And I love, Jordan Peele's, his take with the Twilight Zone has been amazing. So I'm with you. Hand him the keys and let's keep this hype train going.
Right.
Love it.
Plus, I think the next Doctor Strange movie is going to be an anthology, a little bit like Trilogy of Terror. I think it's actually going to be that kind of thing as well. So that's I love that. I mean, we all love Tales from the Hood and
Right.
those kind of movies. So the anthology horror is, I think, a perfect form.
I really like Tales. I forgot about Tales from the Hood. I like the two of the stories, especially one with the little dolls.
The one with the dog.
Oh, God. It's the best story.
The souls of former slaves and how they turn around and got this racist guy, whatever. I really like that story. I like the story with the cop or whatever, the politician. I like that one. You're gonna make me want to pull it out and watch it again.
Well, and there's something to that, right? Like we were saying, a movie on a page, and I think this, anthology stories give us that opportunity, to bring the horror comics to life on the screen. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, very cool.
I think they're working on another Tales from the Hood. I think.
I heard that rumor too. I heard that rumor.
I know they did a second one. It wasn't as good as the first one, but I think they're working on a third one.
Love it. Oh,
yes.
Love it. Another question for you, and actually this one's from our audience again. What comics are you reading now? In 2020, COVID comics. What's that looking like?
Well, I've always, the past couple of years, this past 10 years, I've been reading Walking Dead. Like I said, that's the main one that I've been reading. But I've picked up 100 Bullets. I like that. That's one of my favorites. And a book called Scalped. That's another one that I like. It's, Native American base, out in the Midwest area, deep Midwest. And I really like that one. 100 Bullets. I love that whole concept. The story is great. And like I said, Walking Dead, that's no longer in existence. So right now it's just 100 Bullets right now.
Gotcha.
Comics, I haven't really read any comics in a minute, as far as I'm into, even though I create a superhero genre as far as comics is concerned, I have to read other genres as a form of escape, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't read about superheroes and I'm writing about superheroes. It takes away from what I'm trying to do as far as mentally.
Mm-hmm. Sure, take a breath.
Right.
Yeah. So, what advice would you have for everyone has had a lot of time on their hands, so there's probably a whole bunch of people who have decided, well, maybe I'll give a go at actually start creating a little more. What advice do you have for people who are interested in just getting into becoming artists, becoming writers for comics, that kind of thing, and have never really done that, but are now interested in getting into the industry?
Right now, I would recommend that they, just pick up a pencil, pad, start doing some artwork. Right now, it's a couple of individuals that are online that do like comics, like chatting and talking about comics. We can Google a lot of different artists and creators to see what they've been doing or how they, established themselves and what they've been doing. Right now, it's the time to really study the genre. And, if you've already been thinking about doing it, right now it's the time to do it because COVID is not going to be around in a sense of like this forever. So, you can get started now and stay focused on it because a lot of us are stuck in the house. Concentrate on your writing, pull up some old movies, new movies, just watch them, get your ideas together, put them on paper, because, there's nothing new under the sun with all the ideas that we have, even though we think everything is new in our creativity, but all actuality it's not. You can always take and build upon what, someone else has done, and you can always come up with your own thing, obviously, and hopefully you can take that to a whole nother level. But right now, writing is essential because a lot of us are stuck in the house. It's kind of like misery, you know, kind of like that. So we need to treat it as such, even though what's her name? She forced them to write the story. Right now we're being forced by COVID, and we can write our stories based on that or do our artwork based on that. It's the same exact thing. We have to look at it like that. But I would tell everyone, if that's something they want to do, is stay focused. Right now is the time to try to focus on it and try to escape from everything else that's going on outside of our household or loft, wherever we're staying. And that way, our creativity, we can take it to a whole nother level. We don't necessarily have to go to a Comic-Con to, see the people right now. Obviously, we're not going to see them, so we can just take it upon ourselves and be creative.
I love that. And thank you for that inspiration, because I don't want to get to the point where I need Kathy Bates standing over my bed with a baseball bat. Get my draft done. So that reminder.
Hey, COVID is like that right now. It's our Bates right now.
Yeah, I am just going to start hearing the voice of Annie Wilkes as whenever COVID,
Right. Every time you sit on the television, that's all you see is COVID. Like, come on, man.
I'm going to take a real quick moment with that. We do have like one or two questions, but I do want to give a quick shout out to a local theater in the area, because you brought up misery. And I don't know if there's a more perfect opportunity to bring this into the conversation. But if you're interested, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful folks at the Ringwald Theater have put together a musical spoof of Misery. I believe it's called A Misery Christmas. And they are streaming it live now. So feel free to check out the Ringwald's website to get tickets. I can't wait. It's one of my absolute favorite Christmas movies. Yes, I consider it a Christmas movie, and I'm excited. So thanks, Andre. Like I said, king of the transitions tonight. Had to give him a shout out.
No problem.
Honest to goodness, this has been an incredible conversation. Time flew by quicker than guys, it's already almost time to go. I'm sad about it, but for everything there is a season. Turn. So for our final question of the evening, we talked about what people who are trying to create, what independent artists are who are trying to create can do. So our final question is, how can we as audience members best support comic artists and creative, and particularly comic artists and creatives of color, BIPOC? How can we support you guys and during and beyond COVID?
Well, most of us, I've established a website maybe back in the 90s, I think, well, not like 90s, but in early 2000s when www first came out. At my website, Urban Style Comics, a lot of people, they have websites, they have their social media pages. If you can link up on these pages, a lot of them are doing Kickstarters. I haven't done a Kickstarter because I have another plan for the Kickstarter plan that I plan on doing, because I don't think that's not my area right there. But a lot of people are doing Kickstarters. A few people have websites. You can look those up. If you Google Black superheroes or Black Superheroes Matters and things of that nature, you probably find a list of different characters that are independent, so you can find out how you can actually link up with them to get a copy of their books. For the most part, I see a lot of people doing Kickstarters. Me, it's just urbanstylecomics.com, or you can go to urbanstylecomics.store.
Perfect. Thank you. And yes, please all find that link in the comment section, everybody. Support. And I will say, like, even with some places being closed, a lot of those shops are still doing online orders and still filling online orders. So we could also, cut out the middleman. Don't buy from Amazon. Find your local shop, help out our artists, and help out our vendors who support this amazing industry.
One more thing. You can go to Green Brain Comics over in Dearborn on Michigan Avenue. I forgot about them. They carry a lot of Detroit-based books. Yeah,
That's what's up, man. Yeah.
I love Green Brain Comics.
Love Green Brain. Yes. Love it. Thank you.
Well, I think that's it. Luna, Nick, do you guys have anything else you'd like to say? You know what? Actually, before you guys go, let me go ahead and just let me do a shout out real quick. I'm sorry, I'll go first. Back to me. I just want to do a shout out real quick to everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you very much. I see you all out there on Facebook. If you are joining us on YouTube, hello to you guys. That's a new platform that we're streaming live on. So hello. I want to say thank you, Victor. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Bridget. You guys were super active and engaging and engaged. And that's what we want to hear. That's what we want. We want you guys to join us, not just watch us. And one final thing, a huge shout out to Ashley Lyle and Dan Johnson. For those of you who are watching not live, you probably don't see the comments down below. We want to do a huge shout out and thank them for their tireless work, as Luna wonderfully put it, for helping us move towards Michigan theater as an anti-racist entity. So thank you so much for your hard work, guys. And now I'll throw it off to the other two founders.
Andre, I'm just going to say thanks. We appreciate you. I love Dreadlocks and have since I just kind of stumbled across it 5 years ago. So thank you so much for coming on and chat with us and letting us geek a little bit. So fangirl.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a wonderful conversation. Comics are just our modern myths, and it's wonderful to see a producer and a creator like you who also helps other creators. So this was a wonderful conversation.
I appreciate you guys.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Cheers.
Right, thank you.
Bye, everybody. And
say
Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Beyond the Ghostlight.